What's up, you beautiful people? I am your host, the Danger Dave, and it's been a minute. A solid minute since I last talked about the new upcoming Batman game, Gotham Knights. And since then till now, I've been actually thinking about what villains I'd like to see in Gotham Knights. And we already have some villains that have been confirmed. We have seen Mr. Freeze in the gameplay trailer, and of course the Court of Owls are going to be the main villain, so when the court's around, the Talons are not far behind. And we can also speculate that the League of Assassins is going to be in this game, because we did see that emblem, and it suspiciously looks a lot like a demon head emblem from the League. And it's also mentioned in Red Hood's bio that he was forcibly resurrected. So that could possibly hint at him being resurrected in the Lazarus Pit. And so, this is going to be my top 10 Batman villains that I want to see in Gotham Knights. I will be talking about their levels and what you could see in them, as well as how they could work for like a boss fight. And as always with any top 10 list, this is my personal list and not yours. However, if you would like to tell me what villains you'd like to see in Gotham Knights, let me know in the comments below. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's go! So, kicking this thing off at number 1 is the Ratcatcher, Otis Flanagan. He first appeared in Detective Comics 585 in April 1988, and his whole shtick is that he can communicate and train rats, and he also wields a gas gun. And the Ratcatcher, he's always been a C-list villain. He hasn't exactly ever really posed too much of a challenge for Batman or the Bat family, and I don't exactly remember the last time I saw a Ratcatcher in the comics. Oh, no. He was actually in Batman Eternal for a little bit, but I don't actually recall if I've seen him in, like, the newer books, like the Rebirth books and whatnot. But as far as C-list villains go, Ratcatcher has always been my personal favorite. I just think he's really cool. We did get a few Easter eggs of him in Arkham Asylum, and he was also mentioned in Arkham City. I don't recall hearing anything out of him in Arkham Knight, though. But for his level, you could totally have this part where you go down in the sewers, and I know a lot of people personally think of sewers in Gotham City. They think of Killer Croc. But I think it would be really cool to see Ratcatcher, because Ratcatcher knows the sewers of Gotham City like the back of his hand. I mean, so does Killer Croc, but, you know, I digress. But it'd be really cool. You could go down there and you could have like an Indiana Jones moment where the tunnels are just flooded with rats, and it could be a little bit of like mazy a little bit. And as far as his boss fight goes, you could have, like, since he communicates with rats, he could, like, call them to him, and he could make, like, a little rat shield for him. And you would have to, like, bat the rats off of him before you can do actual damage. He could, you know, spray you with his gas gun. He could throw rats at you, do, like, a little, like, rat shockwave. And I just think there's a lot of possibilities for this to be a really cool level and a really cool boss fight for Gotham Knights. And yeah, Ratcatcher, I'd love to see him in Gotham Knights. And next up on number 2 is Prometheus. And he first appeared in New Year's Evil, Prometheus, in February 1998. And Prometheus has always been a dark reflection of Batman. His family was a crime family, and his parents were killed by cops. And so, kind of like Batman, only the opposite, he dedicated his life to, like, overthrowing the establishment and fighting law and order. So he basically just built himself to, like, physical perfection. He became an expert hand-to-hand combatant and an expert marksman, and he has, like, this helmet And the helmet allows him, it's a computerized helmet, and he can download basically anything he wants directly into his brain, from information to body movements to fighting styles. And in fact, that's actually how he's beaten Batman a couple of times, is that he can download his fighting style into his brain and know how to, beat him, what moves he needs to do, how to block, all that stuff, and he's beaten Batman in a straight up fight. In fact, Batman, to beat him, if I remember correctly, he had to download information to his helmet of the fighting style of a 2-year-old baby. And so that was basically how Batman beat him, because you just couldn't beat him in hand-to-hand combat. He was just too good. He was basically holding all the aces. And I think Prometheus could work in this game kind of like Deathstroke in Arkham Origins, where it's a lot of attacks and counter attacks. You gotta counter his counters while attacking him. And since he knows your fighting style, it would be a lot of that like cat and mouse game where you gotta do all the counters and try to throw him off his game. Since he's an expert marksman, he could also do a lot of ranged attacks, so you would not be safe going out of range. And maybe you have to beat him in a straight fight, or maybe as Batgirl, since she can hack into anything, you would have to hack into his helmet. You would have to stun him somehow, and then hack into his helmet and download information of like I said, a 2-year-old baby, and then just beat the crap out of him. And then maybe he reboots his helmet, and that's how you beat him. That's a definite possibility. We didn't see Prometheus in the Arkham games. We did get to see the Wanted poster of Prometheus. And honestly, I think it's high time that Prometheus makes his video game debut in Gotham Knights. And coming up next on number 3 is KG Beast, or The Beast as he's known in the more recent comics. And he is Anatoly Knyazev, and I do apologize if I just butchered the hell out of that name. And he first appeared in Batman 417 in 1988. And he's enhanced with cybernetics, and he's an extremely formidable hand-to-hand combatant. And he also has this prosthetic weapon system on his arm. And whatever he needs it to be, he can attach it to his arm. He can be a machine gun, it can be a rocket launcher, it can be a sword. Whatever he needs to go there for the situation at hand, he can attach it there. And it makes him an extremely versatile combatant. And KG Beast, he can really, push Batman to his limits in a fight. If you've ever read the more recent Batman All-Star comic, where KG Beast is hunting down Batman and Two-Face, including the more newer comics, where the Beast actually shot Nightwing in the head. Nightwing's okay, though, because, getting shot in the head doesn't kill you in this universe. Somehow. But Batman hunts down KG Beast, and they have this just big, epic, fight in the middle of a blizzard. And, KG Beast was definitely not even holding his own. He was definitely taking the fight to Batman. And I personally think that KG Beast would be an awesome boss fight in this game. Just everything he could do, he could be, rush in and beat the crap out of you, hand to hand, and then jump away and then use rockets for long range attacks. And he could be extremely predictable. You never knew exactly what he was going to do, so you would have to kind of watch him and time your movements to get in. And wait for a time for him to either be thrown off his game, or maybe when he's swapping weapons, that's your time to rush in and beat the crap out of him. And he can hit, like I said, you could have the machine gun, he could have the sword, the rockets, a chainsaw. That would be kind of metal as fuck. But I've always liked KG Beast. He's always been awesome. He's always been an awesome assassin. With his arm makes him extremely deadly. Not to mention just him being an expert martial artist. And I think he would make a really kick-ass boss fight in Gotham Knights. Up next at number 4 is Professor Pig, Laszlo Valentine, and he first appeared in Batman 666. And at this point, Batman is Dick Grayson, so he's more of a Dick Grayson Batman villain. But we did see him in Arkham Knight. In fact, he had a really cool side mission in Arkham Knight. And how Professor Pig could work in this game is kind of like he did in Arkham Knight, because of the side missions from Arkham Knight, I haven't played Arkham Knight in a while, but I do remember the side mission because you went into his creepy little hospital area, and you saw all the hospital beds covered in blood. In fact, I think that's why Arkham Knight got an M rating, was because of Professor Pig. And you went in there and you had to fight all of his Daltrons. And of course, they don't feel pain, so you gotta find a way to really just keep them down so they don't get up again. And of course, Professor Pig, for this boss fight, he could attack you with surgical instruments, with saws, knives, scalpels, and also have the Daltrons at his disposal. And yeah, it would be ripping off Arkham Knight a little bit, but I think that'd be really cool. You have all these Daltrons running around, and you gotta deal with them, and then all of a sudden this fat bastard comes at you with a surgical saw, and you gotta get away from them and fight him. And, Professor Pig, maybe he doesn't feel pain either. Because if I remember correctly, he is on drugs. I don't remember what drug of choice he uses. I think it's coke? Is that right? If you know what kind of drug Professor Pig uses, let me know in the comments below. But I think it's coke. Or did he inject something in his arm? I don't exactly remember. I just know he was on drugs. But yeah, Professor Pig would be awesome. You have to go into maybe he's at the Gotham Hospital and he's making Daltrons there. So you have to go through this really creepy hospital where you have the Daltrons, and then you finally get to Professor Pig and you have to fight him with all these other Daltrons around. It'd be really cool. Like I said, kind of a ripoff from Arkham Knight, but like I said, that was one of the more memorable side missions for me from Arkham Knight, so I'd love to see Professor Pig in this game. And coming smack dab in the middle is Man-Bat, Kirk Langstrom. He first appeared in Detective Comics 400 in 1970. And you know what? Man-Bat, along with a few other villains on this list, kind of got the shaft in some games. Man-Bat didn't really get a lot of time in the spotlight for Arkham Knight, and I actually think it was a big missed opportunity for Arkham Knight, where you could have this moment, kind of like in on Leather Wings, where you shoot your grapple to Man-Bat, and then you're both flying around the city in Leather Wings. And he takes you from one end of the city to the other, and you gotta dodge buildings and jump over, maneuver around stuff, and it would just be this awesome spectacle. And I could definitely see something like that in this game, where you go to the bell tower, or maybe his laboratory, and he's turned into Man-Bat again, and you shoot your grapple at him, and then you get yanked out the window, and you're flying around Gotham City. And since this is an open world, it'd be really cool. You're flying through the streets, and you're dodging buildings, and you're trying to get him to stop, and then eventually you do get him to stop at maybe a construction site, or maybe in the streets of Gotham, and you gotta fight him now. That would be awesome. And since he didn't get a lot of time in Arkham Knight, I'd love to see Man-Bat. Man-Bat has always been awesome. Man-Bat has always been cool. And definitely want to see him in Gotham Knights. Up next is, on number 6, is the Scarecrow. Because, of course, it's got to be Scarecrow. Now, I know was the main villain of Arkham Knight. Not the main villain, but one of the big villains. But you can't go wrong with Scarecrow. Scarecrow has always been cool. In fact, some of the best segments in Arkham Asylum were the Scarecrow hallucination and nightmare sequences. And I think that could really be cool here. You could have a sequence with each character, and each nightmare is different with, Red Hood and Nightwing and Tim Drake and whatnot, and other members of the Bat family. As they're getting gassed by the fear gas, they each see something different, and they have different fears and whatnot. And I think that'd be really cool. The whole level is just this nightmare level, and you gotta make your way to Scarecrow and fight him and his legions of unholy, henchmen and whatnot. And especially since Batman is dead, there can be a lot of fear of they failed him And, Batman could be coming out and be like, yo, you failed me. I brought you in and you failed me, sort of thing. And just the different fears of the Bat family, I think, would make for a really interesting level, because that way each level would be different if you played it with like a different character or other characters were with you. And it would be awesome. Like I said, you can't go wrong with Scarecrow. He has been overused a little bit, but I still think that Scarecrow should be in this game. And I really want him in this, because just me thinking about like a nightmare level with Scarecrow, kind of like, not exactly like the ones in Asylum, but like a little bit different, would be awesome to me. And coming up next at number 7 is Anarchy. And Anarchy first appeared in Detective Comics 608. And Anarchy, he did show up in Arkham Origins, and it was really cool. But it was just kind of like a small little side mission. You defused some bombs, you beat up his goons, and then you beat up him, and that was about it. And since every time Batman is supposedly dead, Gotham kind of goes into a chaotic state, more chaotic than it already is. Take a Battle for the Cow, for instance. So I definitely think since, Gotham City is probably going to be in more chaos, that this is right up Anarchy's level. In fact, I was expecting to see Anarchy in Arkham Knight. I think that was another kind of missed opportunity where you could have Anarchy. He is mentioned by some of the thugs where they're like, hey, has anybody seen the Anarchy kid? He'd love this. But yeah, Anarchy, he would just be out there doing his Anarchy shit, causing a bunch of chaos, a bunch of mayhem. He's got his, little legions of Anarchy villains, and you have to, take them down and then get to him. I think it would be really cool. I don't think Anarchy really has gotten, really his time in the sun to be shown in a game, because like I said, that was a really small side mission he was in, and I definitely want to see more of him, especially in Gotham Knights. And as for number 8 is Poison Ivy, and she first appeared in Batman 181 in 1966. And Poison Ivy, in more recent years, she's kind of undertaken a more anti-hero role. She's not exactly all bad, but she's not exactly good either. And in Arkham Asylum, she definitely had the best boss fight of all the boss fights in that game. And she had a small role in Arkham City, and she played a bigger role in Arkham Knight. But you know what? As for a boss fight, you can't ever really go wrong with Poison Ivy. It could be maybe a little more generic, like you go into like her greenhouse area, and maybe she's just doing a bunch of like attacking the city with spores, and making all like the plant life go crazy, and you got like these giant like Venus flytraps that eat men and whatnot going around, and you gotta go in there and stop her. And I think there's unlimited ways you can use Poison Ivy for a level. You like jungles or like forest ways, or like the city is becoming more jungle-like, and just different ways she could be a boss would be awesome. It'd actually be kind of cool. I just thought of this right now, of kind of like in the New Adventures where they had like those little like fleshy plant people, where like the plant people like wore like the flesh people suit. I think that'd be kind of cool. Like maybe you stumble across like a crime scene, and they're like, wait a minute, this skin is weird, and they like pull off a section of this guy's like hand, and it's just like, oh god, he's wearing like a meat suit or something like that. And it would be like, well, this is definitely Poison Ivy. And so maybe she's like sprinkling spores around the city that would make, people become flesh. Or maybe she's invading Gotham City with like this army of like plant people that are wearing like flesh suits. I don't know. There's, like I said, I think there's unlimited ways you can use Poison Ivy. And it would definitely be interesting to see how she would be used in Gotham Knights. And second to last is Black Mask. And he first appeared in Batman 386. And if we're talking about villains that kind of got the shaft, definitely Anarchy, but definitely Black Mask in Arkham Origins. In fact, he's not even shown very much. Roman Sionis, that way, is because, in that game, it's Joker. And so, and of course, the main villain is pushed to a side mission in that game, which was really fucking stupid, if you ask me. Because Black Mask, he's actually really interesting. You know, he's basically Gotham City's kind of like biggest crime boss, in a way. You know, he's, very strategic and tactical. He's actually pretty damn good in hand-to-hand combat and is a expert marksman, especially with his dual semi-automatic pistols. And I think you should give Black Mask his time in the sun, since he was kind of just brushed off to the side in Arkham Origins. He didn't really get his due that I think he was owed. And I think it would be really cool to see Black Mask finally, step up to be the villain that us comic book fans know that he can be. Because Roman Sionis is crazy, okay? Not only, like I said, he's good at hand-to-hand combat, an expert marksman, he is very sadistic and he likes torture, and he's a prominent figure in the mob scene for Gotham. And I think that could tie into the game of, like, different mob families are trying to take over now that Batman is gone. So, in a way, you could see maybe like the Falcones and the Maronis, and of course, Black Mask is trying to push, and you could have like this, just every mob family in Gotham City trying to push their way into power. And so maybe you just have like Black Mask as, he's attacking different, the Falcones. And that's where you see, like, Black Mask's men. And so you gotta go take down Black Mask now at his, like, steel mill, or maybe not even that, maybe at, like, his big, like, hideout, like, mansion or whatnot. And I just think it's time for Black Mask to really be shown as the serious Batman villain that he is. And last, but certainly not least, at number 10 is Clayface. Whether it be Matt Hagen or Basil Karlo, I know him as Matt Hagen from the animated series, which they basically took Basil Karlo and gave that personality and traits to Matt Hagen, because Matt Hagen was the actor in the animated series. But in the comic books, there's been like 3 different Clayfaces. There was the first one, Basil Karlo, who was the horror movie actor, and he wore like this clay face mask, and he basically got really pissed off when people were going to remake some of his movies, so he started killing, the actors that were in those movies. And then you had the second Clayface, who was Matt Hagen, and he found like the radioactive clay when he dove into the water, and he found this clay. It allowed him to, shapeshift into basically anything he wanted it to, transform into. And then the third Clayface, which I never remember this guy's name, but I remember his power. And the touch, he wears like this containment suit. And the touch of his clay it burns. It's like acid. And from time to time, in order to ease his pain from the clay, he actually has to kind of like expel some of this clay onto his victims to sort of ease his pain. And then, of course, in the Mud Pact, you had Basil Karlo, and he took blood samples from each of the Clayfaces and injected it into him, and he became like the ultimate Clayface. He had like the burning touch of the clay from the third Clayface, as well as the transforming powers of Matt Hagen. So he was like the super Clayface. But I'm rambling, folks. I'm sorry about that. But he first appeared in Detective Comics 298, and Clayface is just a classic Batman villain. He had a pretty cool boss fight in Arkham City, but in terms of what he's doing in Gotham Knights, I really don't know. I haven't really came up with something like that. Maybe... I don't know. I just know I want to see Clayface in this game. I think he'd be really cool. And in terms of the boss fight, I mean, there's really nothing you can't do with Clayface. Like I said, he can transform into anything he wants, so the possibilities are pretty endless. And as far as a level for Clayface, I don't really know. I know you could have maybe like his like little Clayface enemies, like little like clay enemies, and you gotta find like unique ways to take them down, as well as when you get to him, maybe he becomes like a giant Clayface. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, I would have to brainstorm more ideas how to make a level and a boss fight for him, because like I said, the possibilities are endless with Clayface. All I know is I want to see Clayface in Gotham Knights. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is my list of the top 10 10 villains that I want to see in Gotham Knights. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below about any one of these villains or how they could be used in a boss fight or a level. I would really like to hear what you guys have to say. And as always, like I mentioned before, let me know what villains you'd like to see in Gotham Knights. So, that is all the time I have for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. If you like this episode, you know what you need to do. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys at the next episode. You guys have yourself a fantastic day.